Town Board, you are live.
Are we live?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals hearings for Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. Right off the bat, we have two canceled public hearings this evening. First one is Wickapog Realty, 1 LLC at 391 East Lake Drive in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-7-3-5. And the other canceled hearing tonight is the Miller Brothers Hospitality LLC, located at 28 Maidstone Park in Springs, Suffolk, tax map number 300-38-4-22.1. With that, we'll move to our first scheduled public hearing, and I'll read it into the record. Applicant is Stephen Germain Waters Edge Qualified Personal Residence Trust at 75 Waters Edge in Springs, Suffolk, tax map number 300-83-7-10. The applicant is Stephen Germain Waters Edge Qualified Personal Residence Trust, and the size and location is 70,438 square feet at 75 Waters Edge and contiguous to Gardeners Bay. Barnes Landing, map number 2572, lots 123 through 131 in Springs. And the description is to the reconstruction of 270 linear feet of bulkhead on a parcel of land containing coastal bluffs, beaches, and tidal surface waters. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code. The zoning district is B residence, VE velocity flood zone, elevation 12, and X flood zones. And the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have a proper notice of affidavit and posting?
We do. We have an affidavit of mailing and posting that reflects that the mailing was done on August 6, 2022, and the posting was done on August 7th, 2022, and the paperwork appears to be in order.
Thank you. Denise?
Yes.
Ryan, you want to pull up the photos?
Sorry about that.
Hey guys, bear with me one sec. Matt Lowndes over at LTV. I have to fix the phone connection line. It went dead on us. I have to bring it back up. But you guys can continue.
Is this the first photo, Brian?
It
We're
says I'm
going,
sharing.
all right, let me explain. When
Can
I
you-
did my field inspection, the photos that I took, I went there at high tide. So I didn't quite get the visual for the board that I wanted. So we're using the photos taken by the planning department. And I believe this is the bulkhead facing north with the rock revetment. Now, the one
No.
thing, all right, next photo, Brian.
That's just a
That's
storm
just,
drain.
yeah, I think so. These are not yours, though. These are the ones, are they?
Yes.
This area here,
I just want to let the public know that the phone lines are open. They can call in. I apologize for that.
All right, thank you.
this is, looks like, it's hard to tell from this angle, but it looks like this is the area, am I right, Brian, where the rock revetment was going to go, which has now been pulled. It's no longer a part of this application because the DEC has said no to that extension. So it's really become an in-place, in-kind
Correct.
bulkhead replacement. Next, Brian. This is again facing north, the bulkhead. Next. This is facing north as well. This is to give you a clear picture of the vegetation that on the bluff. This is a very lush bluff. It's very heavily vegetated. It's actually very pretty. Next photo, please. This is the area, I believe, that was going to be continued to the south with, this is no longer going to be, have a rock revetment. It's just going to be what you see. What you see there is just going to be replaced. Next. Similar picture, same scenario.
That's the last photo.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Denise?
No.
Lisa, how are you?
Hi, good evening. Lisa Poyer, Twin Forks
think it
Permits
is.
on behalf of the applicant.
You want to raise your right hand? You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So the proposed application is to replace in-kind in place 270 linear feet of bulkhead, which is currently wood bulkhead. They're going to replace it with a vinyl bulkhead. It's shore guard sheet piles at 16 feet long, which is fairly standard in the area. And then 189 feet of the shoreline contains an existing rock revetment. They're going to keep that, resettle some of the stones that may have shifted over the years, but it's going to basically remain as it is currently as far as the length of the revetment. It's as Ford had mentioned that we had originally requested to extend the revetment, but the DEC in their review had requested or raised some objections to that. So we altered the application to just replace what's there right now.
It's pretty. So it's pretty much become in place in kind. What exists is going to be
Correct, replaced with the vinyl bulkhead.
replaced.
So this 63 feet is what you're not replacing?
Correct,
Right, okay.
a little more than that,
More,
70,
Right.
81 feet.
And the stones are going to be taken out by a barge,
Uh,
or are they going to be taken out by barge?
No,
Or-
most of them are okay. They're just, once the shore guard is put in behind, depending upon where it sets, some of the stones have shifted a little bit, so they'll just be lifted and reset right in place.
So that you can replace the bulkhead.
Yes.
Now, on the tie rods, are they helicals or are they tie rods to dead men?
They were converted to helical piles. They were originally proposed to do dead men, but we had discussed it with the engineer, and the helical piles, they feel, are sufficient to stabilize it while minimizing the disturbance area. So we will have a little tiny bit just on the back side, and that area will be replanted with beach grass. But we felt that the helical piles will give the same kind of stability for anchoring it while not having to over excavate and place new.
And the equipment for the helical piles will be brought how? Through the barge or?
Correct. It'll all be done from the water. There is no land access. There's no bluff walkway down in this property. It's about 2 properties away through a HOA property that you can gain access to the site. Otherwise, everything will be brought in by barge, and all the work will be done via the barge as well.
So the boulders that are there now will be moved out of the way for the repair of the bulkheads, then put back in place where they sit now?
Most of the boulders can actually stay where they are. They'll pull the existing damaged bulkhead out, and then they'll just drive in the new bulkheads. And then if any of the rocks have shifted in that process, they'll reset those. And then there are a couple rocks that have shifted as well, so they'll reset those in the same process. They'll do about 30 feet at a time.
And there's still no proposed work to the existing groins.
Correct.
They're going to remain.
They're going to remain as they are.
And then the revegetation of the bluff afterwards, you want to speak to that?
It'll be minimal because we are no longer over excavating in order to place the dead man. But there will be beach grass that will be just placed on the landward edge, which is kind of already growing there right now. And it is a substantial bluff there with vegetation.
Oh, absolutely. Very, very well screened.
Anybody have any questions?
Well, if these change to helicals and it's going to change slightly what you're doing in order to achieve your goals, will there be a drawing that's going to reflect the fact that I guess we're going to have less planting or potentially less? You're just going to complete the planting or whatever's necessary when this project is done behind the bulkhead. is that right?
Correct. And there was a drawing that was submitted that shows the helical
Yeah, I
pilings.
see it. I see that there. Okay.
It's
And the returns, you already asked about the returns. Yeah.
Any questions?
I'm good.
Thank you. Brian?
Good evening. I'm going to stay here.
Yes,
if that's
fine.
Okay with you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Brian Frank from the Planning Department.
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So the property is located in the Accabonac Cliffs area of Springs, and the zoning board has reviewed a number of bulkhead reconstructions in this area. The bluff face is very steep and high. The elevations here range from 70 to about 84 feet above sea level. And even if there were a staircase on this property, which there isn't, it wouldn't be suitable for construction access. All of the bulkhead reconstructions we've seen here in recent years have required barge access to the shoreline and the in-place in-kind replacement of the structures. The only thing that's a little bit different than this is at the northernmost of about 1,400 linear feet of properties that either have stone armor with a bulkhead or just stone armor and no bulkhead. And the only exception to that is that 60-foot gap in the southern portion of the property, which is going to stay that way to be consistent with the DEC permit. These are the most recent plans. These are the plans up on your screen that show the helical piles replacing the tie rods and dead men. And all of the detail that the planning department recommends for construction access are shown on the Maresca plans here. The bulkhead is composed of non-treated materials, is the practice of the board. Access is from by barge. Disturbed areas would be revegetated, and as the planning department has in similar applications, any alterations to the shore perpendicular groins should be prohibited. But in all really substantial ways, the application is pretty consistent with a number of recent applications that the zoning board has reviewed at the north end of Water's Edge, the north end of Accabonac Cliffs. But if there are any questions that I can answer about the application, I'd be happy to.
Any questions for Brian?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. And Matt, is any callers on the line?
No, there's no callers on the line.
Okay, thank you. Denise, you want to close out?
Yes, let me just find my paperwork. In the matter of the application of Stephen Germain, Water's Edge Qualified Personal Residence Trust, 75 Water's Edge in Springs, Suffolk County, tax map number 300-83-7-10. I make a motion that we close the public hearing record
In the record, yeah.
and the
Hearing and the record.
hearing and the record.
Second.
I'll concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. All right, next hearing, we have HRH Design Group LLC at 172 Cranberry Hole Road, Namagansett, Suffolk tax map number 152-1-13. The applicant is HRH Design Group LLC. The size and location is 318,512 square feet at 172 Cranberry Hole Road, Beach Hampton, Section 5, map number 1763 in Amagansett. The description is to construct a 7,103 square foot residence with 5,014 square foot of patios and decking, a 320 square foot detached gym with outdoor shower, a 648 square foot detached garage, a sanitary system, a 1,250 square foot swimming pool, spa, pool, fence, pool equipment, gravel, driveway gate, and planters on a parcel containing dune land and freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code. The zoning district is A5 residence, AE flood zone, elevation 10, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
We do. We have an affidavit of service and posting attesting that both were done on August 11th, 2022, and the paperwork appears to be in order.
Thank you. And the Vice Chair, Johan.
This is mine. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian, can you enlarge that? I'm sorry if the photo is so small.
It's going to get a little blurry, but yes, I can.
Okay. This is an interesting parcel, and everyone who's looked at, the board members have seen the survey, realize how long it is. I did a quick calculation. It's over 1,100 linear feet along Cranberry Hole Road. I'm going to start at a spot where they posted the notice, and this is fairly close, not exactly, but fairly close to where the driveway would be. that's proposed on the drawing. Next. Now I've just turned and I've looked my way to the west, and I'm looking down Cranberry Hole. Our property is on the left here as I'm staring. I'm standing a bit across the road. So I'm looking down now to the west, and you can see that those of us familiar with the area, how heavily vegetated this is. This lot will be of interest as we discuss it because you'll see that there's a lot of mature and interesting vegetation on it. Next. I've turned in the other way and I'm looking my way east here down towards Bendigo Road, which you'll see in a minute. And again, the property and under our discussion is on the right here in front of the truck. Next. Now I've taken and I've walked all the way down from that sign to the west, and there's a telephone pole slightly to my right. It had number 50 on it. It's the only one on this side of the road. And there's a post in the ground that does not say property line, but when I scale it out, I think that's pretty much the survey stake for it. You can see that small stake that's sort of to the right hand of the photo. This is all the way down at the western terminus of the property. Next. This is now, I walked back down with a sign. When I turn my left, you see Bendigo Road coming in off to your left. You know that that's a road that passes through a significant amount of wetlands on its way to Devon. Next. This is, I've just turned around from that sign and I look, this is exactly across the street from about where the driveway would be, another heavily vegetated portion of the road. Next. Looks to me about the same picture. Okay, now I've gone all the way as far as I can to the east, and you'll see a stake there, kind of lost in the grass. But this is about as far east as you go. So I've walked over 1,100 feet from the western edge down along the road. And this is now down, and we're going to see the vegetation is going to be slightly different here. We're going to visit it. It's going to be quite a few pictures of the interior here. Next. Again, it seems to be a repeat of Bendigo Road. Now, I wanted to point out here that on the eastern end of this, coming down to the road, we see these mature or fairly mature, sizable pitch pines. This becomes pretty much a whole run of the mature vegetation we're going to see on the interior along the duneland and also on this end of the road. We have more deciduous trees on the west, which we'll see in future photos. Next.
Sorry, it keeps going back.
So now I've walked in off of the road and you start to get a feel for what the interior of this property is. In terms of duneland, it's going to be pretty obvious what there is. There's going to be several photos here that are going to show you the contours of the land. Here we can obviously see some sand dune in front of us. We see some other vegetation. The lot is very interesting from a botanical point of view. There's quite a few species here, quite a few hardwoods on the western end, a lot of pitch pine down here, but it's very diverse. It's pointed out in the TAM. I myself quickly was counting 30 or 31 species, just looking at them casually as I went. It's a nice, beautiful piece of property, and some of this will demonstrate that. Next. Now I'm going to continue on. I'm turning my way, and I'm vaguely, and there'll be some things following the clearable area here. I'm slightly off of it now, but again, you see that we see some mature pines, and you can see that this dune vegetation and the contour of the land here is somewhat dramatic. Next. A little more of that as you continue to go, and we can see that there's interesting ground covers here. There's going to be lichens. I think I have a close-up of it. Next. Again, here I just wanted to get the idea of both the ground cover and the lichen cover. It's a very native state here, and it's a natural and beautiful parcel. And so a good deal of it is outside of the buildable envelope, and a good deal of it will be preserved. But it is something for us to consider just how interesting and somewhat pristine this is. Next. Okay, so when Yeah. If I come back out on the road opposite Bendigo, there was at one point an access into the property, I'm assuming by a previous owner. There's a new chain up that's obviously to discourage people from getting in there, dumping, parking, doing whatever. So it's an effort to keep people out of there. And I'm going to walk along this road a little bit. And it's going to take us into basically very much the heart of where the building is to be constructed. Next. That's not quite, it's a little out of order. Here we go. So we're coming in. Now in the distance, you'll see that previous, I'm guessing, to this owner, somebody deposited some building materials there. It's not exactly trash. It looks like something they were trying to reclaim. It's someplace down in the heart of the property. But again, this is very much in the clearable area that's been proposed on their drawings. Next. This is just that roadway coming into it. So you can see a bit of a roadway that came in. Again, pinelands, I mean, we see quite a few pine here, and we see a fairly mature setting. Next. I'm going to walk out the other end, I think, here at some point. Why don't you go on next? I may have some repeats in here. No. Back out on the road. See if I have another one. I've tried to get something of the other end, but we're getting a feeling for it anyway. I spent over an hour on the property because it's extensive and it's quite a walk in there. And eventually what you'll see is on the west end of this property, it's very heavily deciduous here, where we have hickories and sassafras and oaks and red maple. And on the eastern end of it, we see more pine. And on the interior, we see a more mature duneland. So the pictures got a little convoluted. But what I really wanted everyone to see in this is just how interesting and ecologically important this parcel is as we continue to discuss. There were a couple of photos that maybe we missed, it not necessary, that showed some stakes, just for an idea that the clearable area that's pretty much, we can get that off the print, is in the heart of this parcel, vaguely in the center of the whole run. So I think that's enough, Ryan. I just wanted to see that we got a real good feeling about what it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. And there's some beautiful, beautiful vegetation in there. Thank you. Hi, Rich. How are you?
How are you?
Good. You want to introduce yourself?
Richard Warren from InterScience, here with Sabrina Kelly from my office on behalf of the applicant.
You want to raise your right hand? Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Right. Now, just a quick point of clarification before you go. In the description, we're looking at a garage
Which will be reduced
that
to
is
648
square feet, and it's not noticed for a variance. How do you
be
want to?
reduced to 600.
What's that?
It's going to be reduced to 600.
Oh, so you'll reduce that. We won't have to worry about
We
that.
caught that too. There are a couple of little corrections that we have to make.
Okay, great.
So I'll go through those.
Thank you.
So, good evening, Richard Warren on behalf of the applicant. This is a large 7.14 acre parcel that's wooded, undeveloped, located south side of Cranberry Hole Road. Freshwater wetlands are located on 3 parts of the property. South of the property, which is off the site, there's on the north of the property, on the opposite side of Cranberry Hole Road, there's also wetlands that's at the corner of Bendigo Road and Cranberry Hole. And then on the site's most eastern leg of the property, down that long stretch, there's a little area of wetlands down there. Excepting for the driveway and the driveway gate, all the construction is outside of wetlands jurisdiction. So the reason we're here is because of the presence of dune vegetation, and the site is mostly, the location, as you properly described, has a very interesting mix of vegetation. 3 years ago, the town issued an administrative permit for this piece of property, and they issued an approval for a 5,536 square foot residence, 1,000 square foot swimming pool, 4,367 square foot of patio and decking, 196 square foot pool house, 585 square foot garage. The house is 32 feet tall. As part of that approval, the town approved clearing on the site of 43,211 square feet. So there was a clearing limit that was defined on this property right in the center. It's really, as you look at the property, it's right in that kind of deepest belly of the site, which is where the house would be located.
And what's the clearing now?
The clearing is going to be slightly less.
Okay.
The clearing is proposed. The plan that was approved by the board included a notation that all the disturbed areas on the site would be replanted with beach grass. There would be no lawn on the property. We would agree to be doing that as well, Ms. Bright. The house is now in a different ownership. The application before you was designed to essentially try to follow the parameters of what had been approved through the administrative approval. The house has gotten slightly larger. It's now 7,103 square feet on this parcel. The decks and patios are 5,000 square feet. That sounds like a lot on the property, but when you recognize that there is no lawn or no outdoor place for someone to get off, it's all going to be native landscape, and it is a large parcel. It's 7 acres. It's actually not that much. 1,200 square foot swimming pool, a 320 square foot detached gym, pool fencing, gravel driveway. The roof line of this house will be 7 feet lower because it is now a flat roof house as opposed to a pitched roof house than what had been approved. There's a 2-car garage, and we received a call from Brian yesterday letting us know that the architects had designed the garage too big. We spoke with them, and the garage will be brought in, reducing the 48 square feet that exceeds the maximum allowable. Essentially, it's 24 by 27. It will become 24 by 25 foot garage to meet the maximum size that's allowed for accessory structures. The approved lot coverage was 13,693. The proposed lot coverage is going to be 15,678 square feet. Maximum permissible coverage is 77,000 square feet on this lot. Approved building coverage is 4,035 square feet. Proposed coverage is 6,726. Maximum permitted is 21,000 square feet. So we're well below the maximums that are allowed, and we're a little more, but within, I think, reason, given the size of this property, the approval that had been granted before. Regarding the beach vegetation, dune vegetation identified, the approved clearing was 43,211 square feet. The proposal we have is 43,097 square feet, so slightly smaller, but it's been shifted a little bit. We shifted the clearing limit so that it's a little bit further away from the wetlands of the south, and we've shifted it further away from the eastern wetlands as well. So there was a little bit of an adjustment. It's essentially over top of the same place, but we have tightened it up a little bit of the south to get further away from the wetlands. I think generally, though, you could say that is consistent with what had been approved. So we believe that the design that was put together is consistent with what had been previously approved. We took a look at the TAM that was sent to us. The TAM described the house as more sprawling than what had been proposed before. So we did an overlay of that so you could have a sense of actually what the changes were. The footprint, again, got about 1,500 square feet larger, but when you look at the two on top of each other, it's one that has orange and blue. There's another thing.
I can get it.
Is that the one you're about?
Yeah, I forgot to move that over to the flash drive, so I can remote in. I can get it. It's
so this is the overlay of the drawing of what has been approved.
This is the overlay drawing.
Yeah, that's the overlay that we submitted. We submitted copies to the.
Yes.
Is it loading?
yeah. Just I'm sorry.
That's okay. No problem. Could you just zoom in on that a little bit?
As I look at the screen because I can't see.
Yeah. So what you can see there is the orange is showing the position of what had been approved. The swimming pool was further to the south. It's been pulled back, so it's now in kind of the crook of the house, as opposed to being a distinct structure further away. House is now a little bit more, it's U-shaped as opposed to a box, with the swimming pool tucked in the middle. The garage was shifted from one side to the other. The driveway was moved over. The septic was flipped from one side to the other. But if you look at the clearing limits, if I can just walk over here and point. The orange line is what had been approved. The blue line is what we're proposing. So it's been shifted a little bit, but I think in the scope of this property and the scope of the buffers and the landscape, I don't think it's a measurable change. It's actually a little bit smaller than what had been there before. So I think when you actually study this, you can see that while the house is a little bit bigger, the development itself is actually a little bit more compact. We don't actually believe that it's sprawling. We were asked also in the TAM to provide some information about grading. We only got the TAM 2 weeks ago. So we did not have a chance to have a grading plan prepared for you. It was suggested we provide a grading plan to the board before this hearing, but with the 2 weeks,
We can hold the record open, but I think we're going to require one. So,
Yeah,
I mean, and the reason being because with dunes, you have an undulating topography. And on the drawings is showing up to almost 3-4 feet of fill on the drawings. And I think we got to straighten that out. You know, we got to look at that. And
Yeah, I was speaking with the engineer today. The client, the owner of the property, has been traveling for the past 2 weeks. So we were only able to speak with them today by phone while they were in an airport on their way back here. And we spoke to them saying, we're going to have to do a grading plan for the property. And,
if you look at the gym, the corner, the one corner of the gym is in a kind of a dip, right? We have to adjust the garage. We're going to show you grading. We're going to make, the client's intention is to try to keep this house as close to grade as possible. And she's going to be working with the architect to make sure that those grades that are shown in the architectural. Who's the architect? Because I just see.
Delandro and Andrews, they have done the engineers, and they have actually stamped the plans.
Right.
So we are going to provide a grading plan back to you. We're going to need a couple of weeks to do that because the client is just coming back to the area tonight, actually, and they want to work with them. So we're going to get that back to you to deal with that issue.
I'm just kind of wondering if that gym can be pulled back a little bit to try to preserve that.
When you
that
correction?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we can accomplish that.
Yeah.
We can accomplish that. The one thing that did not make it onto the survey is that there is a window well, an egress well in this leg of the house, right here, for the basement. When you look at the architectural plans, the architectural site plan shows an egress well that does not show it on the architectural site plan. They show it on the plans. The architect sent that site plan to the surveyor to have it put on the survey. So we've got to have that put on there too. So
What is the water table on this?
water table is about elevation 4.7. That's what the survey
Wait, what?
4.7.
All right.
Yeah.
So you got a deep basement there too.
Yeah,
Right?
so
So you're going to be 2 feet above water.
They're going to make sure it's 2 feet above. So they've got to make some adjustments through there. And I recognize that the grading plan is going to be important. So we'll be providing that back to you. No soil will be imported to the site. Any existing soil that's removed during the excavation will be used on the site, which is consistent with the approval. There'll be a project limiting fence around the perimeter of this to make sure that the clearing is controlled. The applicant has agreed that there will be no lawn on the property at all. There's a planter that's adjacent to the swimming pool in the patio where they intend to try to install a couple of shade trees for when they're on the patio. But those and a couple of other small planters by the driveway would be the only thing that would not be beach grass on the site. The clearing is, I believe, is consistent with the prior approval. The TAM also recommended that in the TAM, it's a recommendation that, again, no beach grass only, but it also says that the applicant can come back to present a native planting plan to the board. The clients have told us that they like the habitat that's there. And while we have a clearing limit on here, their intention is to get the foundation put into the house and then try to come in and protect as much of that vegetation, because they're just going to have to replant it again. So they would like to try to preserve some of the habitat that's there. So once the foundation's in, they're going to come in and they're going to look and stake off trees and vegetation that they don't want to have disturbed separately inside this clearing limit. And their intention is to then prepare a further evaluation of the landscape to see what else should be planted in those other disturbed areas. And they may come back to you with an alternative plan, which you would obviously have to approve, your staff would look at. But they intend to have some discussion with the town natural resources director about plant materials. But they recognize it will not be long. It'll all be native plants that are consistent with what the town is looking for. We've got a plan for drainage control by Delandro and Andrews that's required. The applicant also agrees that the scenic easements that were established at the prior approval that are relative to the wetlands on the property. So they'll be doing those. And they've agreed with all the conditions that are in the TAM, which I won't go through, but all the conditions that were included that were recommended to you. So I know we have to come back to you. We have to get a grading plan for you. We have to revise the survey to show the egress window well that was inadvertently left off and reduce the size of the garage to 600 square feet. And then revise the architectural plans for the garage and make sure that the elevations on the house reflect 2-foot separation for that. So we're going to be coming back to you with all that information.
And possibly even pull back that gym.
And pull back the gym. Yes.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. Is there a construction team in place already for the applicant here?
There is not yet.
So one of the things that's going to be, of course, concern, we've already been mentioned by the chair, is it's not just the vegetation here, it's the topography. There's a great deal of change. I walked the perimeter of what I could see was staked out for the cleared area, and there's quite a bit of grade change as we walk through that. So a building protocol that we could rely on that would protect the parcel in the way in which we hope can be protected. The proposal is, of course, there's a limited clearing area, but we know how these things go. So I think a building protocol that we could then reference in any decision we make would be important to know that this very interesting and important site from our point of view is going to get the maximum protection. Now, obviously, there's going to be this disturbance to build the project, and that's going to happen, but it would be really unacceptable, I would guess, to the board to find out that any additional damage was done. And I think our protection there is to see to it that it's been spelled out accurately, the access to there, where's material to be moved from, material that's going to be stockpiled, how is it going to be used? You're talking about saving some trees. That's great that they're tagged. Are they to be somehow protected with fencing? What can we do to see that this is done as surgically as possible? Because the surrounding land, and it sounds like it's in the best interest of your applicant as well, but certainly in our interest to know that whatever gets done on a parcel that's this interesting to us and this unique and this ecologically mature, that we want to say that we do the maximum to protect it. Right now, there's some proposed plans without a team in place. We don't have to approve, but without a team in place, we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next step. So I would say on many of these projects that have been of greatest concern to us about ecological damage, we relied heavily on the building protocols to quote them and to reinforce our decisions, whatever it is, when we get to the end, looking back and saying, okay, we understand this is what you're going to do. We understand this is what you proposed. You're only going to access it from a certain spot. You're only going to remove materials from that same spot so that we don't see the site overrun in all directions because we did not specify enough what has to be done. Obviously, this is our concern. It's my concern.
So I will take that back to the client and we'll, as part of our submission, we'll provide you a construction protocol.
I was to say so. Yes.
Anybody else have any questions?
I just wonder, what's the date on this overlay diagram? Third. And the survey is May 9th, 2022, the received date.
The date of the survey I have here.
Okay, a new one. Yes. Oh, true. Okay. January 11th, 2022.
January 11th,
Okay.
2022.
So the things that we're going to get new are going to be, we're going to be getting a new planting plan or a new.
You'll get a construction protocol, a revised survey that shows the relocation of the gym, the shrinking of the garage,
The window well.
window well
Window well.
shown. And then you're going to have separately a grading plan that shows how this, and as well as amended architectural plans in terms of the first floor elevations to make sure that it all works. And we understand that we've got a 2-foot groundwater separation distance we have to.
And some confirmation that the easements that were approved in the last administrative approval that took place several
Well, that
years
would be a
ago.
condition of the.
Yes, yeah,
that would be a condition.
we've agreed to do this.
Stated.
So I would ask for probably 4 weeks, something like that, to get this work done. And if I need more, I could ask for a little more time. I'll try to get it done in 4 weeks. Is that possible?
I'm good.
Everybody else have any questions? Joan, you good?
Well, there was the neighbors
Yeah, there's a
Yes, I
letter.
was bringing up
letter
that letter.
about Whippoorwills. I'm not sure you're prepared to answer that.
I haven't seen any letters, so,
So maybe it came in yesterday.
okay.
We could just address it.
It is posted on the website.
From Robert and Deborah Wick. It too talks about the concerns for the sprawling development. It has concerns about this particular neighbor. Has concerns about clearing, grading, revegetation, scenic easements, and outdoor landscape lighting.
I'll address the letter. I think just from the board's perspective, I think it's, with all due respect, I think it's important also to compare what you had approved a project on this property. There was a house in that plan. The house was 3 feet out of ground, no grading plan approved for that. And as far as the administrative permit, we've looked through all those files. We've tried to follow the parameters of what had been approved before, because we don't want to recreate the wheel here, but we will get this additional information to you and we'll address that letter.
There was also,
I didn't mean to spring the letter on you, but
no, this is all right. It's
That's
important
okay.
to know.
want to
There was also some comment from Joe Karpinski that was sent to me and Jennifer. Maybe Laura, if we can just make sure that gets put into the public file as well.
Yes.
I saw that, right.
Yeah, I need
I
to
didn't
leave
see
it.
that.
Yeah, it just came in today.
Oh, okay.
So we'll put that
That's an
in.
Amagansett resident?
Yeah.
Karpinski?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I guess one way to address some of what the neighbor was complaining about is give us some assurance that we sort of followed dark sky lighting protocols.
I think that's required. So, yeah.
I think
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's
it's
a
required.
We don't have any choice. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's it, Brian?
Well, again,
You're sworn in.
I'd like to go back to the aerial for a minute and because it really is a unique piece of property in a lot of ways, both with regards to its unusual shape and its location. This is really the intersection of Bendigo and Cranberry Hole Road really represents kind of the beginning of the Napeague Isthmus. And the wetlands that you see to the north here on either side of Bendigo, as far as I know, that is Cranberry Hole. That's the wetland, that's the hole of water that the road was named for. And obviously these wetlands are conspicuous. You can see the wetlands in the easternmost portion of the property where it's darker, and that this, you probably can't see it where you're sitting, but this is an approximation or a representation of the 5-foot contour line. All of this is Napeague State Park, and the wetlands to the south of the property are a classic interdunal wetland swale that we find in throughout Napeague State Park. So as has been mentioned both by Mr. Warren and Member Johan in his photos, this is really an ecologically and biologically diverse and active area. You have a number of different habitats coming together. You have tidal freshwater wetlands to the north. You have classic groundwater fed interdunal swales to the south. You have patches of classic secondary duneland habitat with reindeer lichen and Hudsonia, and that was shown in the photo. You have stands of successional area where you have pitch pine in the canopy and what I assume is huckleberry in the understory, and some other areas up by the road here where you have some deciduous hardwoods. So it's, as I said, it's a pretty unique property. And there's a lot of ecological productivity in this area. This is a kind of a hotbed of biodiversity. Some of the issues have already been addressed by Inner Science. The fact that the over design on the garage was just an oversight, and that's going to be corrected. It is a large property at 7 acres, and that's why a house with 7,000 square feet of gross floor area and accessory structures can be perceived as not being large. The planning department's characterization of sprawl really came from the separation of some of the buildings from the main structure. It's a little unusual to see a freestanding gym off to the side of a property like that. There is a detached garage. I will compliment the designers, whether it was Inner Science or the architects or whomever, for the level of detail that they did put on the plan. I can come back to the survey in a minute, but that green color really doesn't, I don't know how well it looks on the screen, but it doesn't really do justice to the level of detail that's on the plan. But I think having things like those freestanding planters on there is a service to the application. It's better that they're shown at the front end of an application than just show up after construction. So I think there's a nod to clarity and attention to detail that the applicant deserves. But it is a large project, and it's pretty clear from Member Johan's photo, and I think it's pretty well acknowledged here that it's not a flat property. And to build a 7,000 square foot house with a basement and detached structures and a swimming pool, there's obviously a certain amount of grading that's necessary. The perimeter of the clearing does have a lot of those canopy trees. So there's going to be tree felling, there's going to be grubbing. And as of right now, the detached garage and the gym are about 10 feet from that eastern clearing boundary. If that separation is increased a little bit, and I think that it's really a minor point at this stage, since, but I think that was one of the reasons why there wasn't more scrutiny into the clearing and grading in the administrative application from a couple of years ago, is that I think in general, there was a greater separation between where those structures were and the clearing boundary that maybe didn't, well, anytime you have structures close to a clearing boundary, there's a concern of being able to adhere to those limits in the real world. It's a lot easier to draw it on paper than it is to do it, especially on a property with topographic relief. Rich and I have both worked on projects where the clearing boundary has been staked by a surveyor. And I'm sorry I didn't think to suggest that until now, but really in light of the discussion and the board's request for a construction protocol, having that boundary staked in the field by a licensed surveyor is one way to ensure that clearing stays where it's.
I 100% agree with that.
That seems to be something
critical.
that is in the applicant's interest too. If they want to retain as much of what's on the property as possible, that's one way to help do that.
Can I just ask, they didn't show up well in the photos, but I kind of walked a stake line of fresh stakes. Were they not put in by a surveyor? I thought I was following surveying lines on the property that staked out.
I actually don't know who put those stakes in. They were there when
There's not just a couple. It's quite a line, and it says on the beginning, proposed clearing, and then.
Yeah, they may be a remnant of the last application. I don't know.
I wouldn't think so.
Our office did not order to have those put in, but the intention would be to have the surveyor locate the clearing boundaries that are approved by you prior to any action, prior to any clearing, and then the town would inspect those. Because I think that's in your recommended recommendations of the permit.
Sorry, Brian.
No, that's fine. So I commend the applicant for being willing to take a look at the gym location and see if it could be tightened up a little bit. It doesn't show up on the on the survey, but on some of the other plans, including the sanitary plan. The pool fence does kind of wend its way outside and then back into the clearing boundary. Again, the applicants did a good job providing a lot of detail. While that's not necessarily, depending on the composition of the fence, that's not necessarily invasive construction, but it is my experience that wherever structures end up over time, more clearing ends up around it. And I wanted to take this opportunity to point that out to both the board and the applicant as well. The planning department doesn't have any objection to using more than beach grass to revegetate with. I would encourage the emphasis to be on duneland type plants. The soils are all duneland. The stuff that you see there that's not duneland is really as a product of ecological succession. You get a little bit of shade and duff and leaf litter and moisture, and it kind of takes away some of that xeric condition, that dry condition that but that's what you expect if you were farther east or west, as you kept going north to more traditional uplands, you give way to more of the oak and hickory that's up near the road here. But because you have the cranberry hole right across the street, and really throughout the isthmus, it's all just dunes and wetlands. But duneland plants, whether that's pitch pine, American holly, red cedar, are examples of some of the plants, some of the species that we've approved in similar revegetations in similar habitats. Not required, but certainly consistent with the NRSP standards and revegetation practices. I don't know if there's anything that I didn't cover. One thing along with that grading plan, I do think this is not in the AE flood zone. It's in the X flood zone. But I think having the first floor elevation of the buildings as part of the grading plan that shows what the height of the building or the height of the floor is going to be above grade lends clarity to a grading plan, and I'd encourage that to be incorporated as well. And other than that, if anybody has any questions that I can answer, I'll do my best.
I'm good.
No,
I'm good too.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Good.
I have my punch list.
Yeah, punch list.
We do have one caller on the line.
Okay, you want to let that caller in?
Yep.
Hello, caller, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
My
name is Jane Muring. Yep. I identify myself, Jane Muring. Address is 32 Ocean Lane, Amagansett.
Thank you. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Deline, members of the Zoning Board, and welcome back to Member McGivern. I acknowledge plainly I am not a direct neighbor of 172 Cranberry Hole Road, as I live south of 27 down in Beach Hampton as the crow flies, probably a mile. But I do know this area extremely well as I traverse Cranberry Hole several times a week all year, and I hope you will see me as having standing and legitimate perspective to engage in this public hearing. I speak tonight as a citizen of Amagansett and East Hampton, concerned and protective about this sensitive area, which is extremely important to us by virtue of its viewshed character, fragile and irreplaceable natural resources and ecology, as well as with a view towards sustainability and resilience issues. Though 172 is not a shoreline property, this parcel is squarely within an area that is identified as one of the top storm surge hotspots in the town's about to be adopted CAR plan. The harbor is extremely dynamic, and though currently per the application, house and structure sit more than 150 feet from them, one can reasonably anticipate expansion of the extensive wetland complex as well as the wetlands on this property, given erosion and rising groundwater. So I asked that to be a factor in your discretion to impose restraint. Beyond that, my specific concerns are as follows. The town, as well as the letter submitted by the Wicks, who are neighbors, both call out the sprawling nature of the property. I understand the calculations of what is proposed versus what is, quote, allowed on 7 acres. But in reality, this is a very irregularly shaped lot, and there are wetlands and important topography, so the real buildable area is far smaller. I know it was a different applicant, but I must observe tonight how this plan compares to the one that came before you in 2019. Lot coverage increases 14%, GFA expands 28%, and building coverage surges 67%. I know it's hard to compare one applicant's wants or needs with another, but the turbocharging of proportions we see here certainly raises a legitimate question of reasonable alternatives under NRSP standards. Next point, GFA of 7,100 doesn't capture the full intensity. From what I can tell from the plans, I see significant below-grade livable usable space, maybe another 25 or 2,800 with nearly 10-foot ceilings, housing 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and recreational space. With respect to house height overall, page 7 of 23 of the architectural plans indicates a large part of the roof will exceed 39 feet because they're maxing out flat roof allowance and building on top of a grade at which they are proposing to add another 3 feet. Nearby 74 Cranberry Hole is a testament to the impact of large-scale elevated development that this will have on this road, looming, and light trespass. Next point, in page 3 of applicant's narrative doc, it notes, and this was a red flag to me, it notes that the new septic system is being built to accommodate 50% expansion, which leads me to my last point. I see some mention of scenic easements in the TAM. You mentioned them tonight. My eyes were not sharp enough to see them on the survey and the file, and they're not mentioned in the applicant's narrative document. To conclude, it seems that alternative reasonable usage exists, and alternative scaled-back plans are also possible without diminishing enjoyment and reasonable use of the property. I visited the property today. I stepped over that chain, I'll admit. I have 39 mosquito bites to prove it. And my visit reconfirmed to me how stunning it is and its extraordinary natural resources value. It's abundantly clear why this parcel is on the CPF target list. Thus, I asked the board to not approve anything larger than what was scoped in the prior NRSP, to ask for reduced height, to ask if clearing can be further restrained, to protect dune structures, topography, and to secure the most extensive scenic easements possible, and even covenants regarding future development across and around this property. Many thanks. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, anybody else on the phone?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Ed?
So are we
Leaving the record open for
4 weeks?
4 weeks.
So do you agree, Rich?
I would take umbrage to calling this a turbocharging of the proposal. The septic system shows a 50% expansion requirement because that's what the health department requires us to show. So we're not doing anything here that's like behind the scenes where this house is going to come in bigger. It's what we're required to do for the health department. So I think it's disingenuous to call this as turbocharging. It paints a picture that's inappropriate. So,
Thank you.
and I also question whether or not she has standing because she's not nearby.
But back to the question of, is 4 weeks going to be adequate for you?
I would hope 4 weeks would be adequate.
And if he couldn't use it, he said he'll come back.
Yeah, if I need additional time, I'll submit a letter requesting some additional time. But the client is just coming back into town tonight. The intention is to have a discussion with them tomorrow with the engineer to start working out some of these details. So I'm hoping I can get all this information back in 4 weeks, but if I need more time, I'll ask.
You need more time? Can you just do that before the 30 days or so?
Yes, I will do
Okay,
that.
thank
Yeah.
you.
I'll know as soon as I can if I need more time. So.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not ready.
Then in the matter of HRH Design Group LLC, 172 Cranberry Hole Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 152-01-13. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing at this time, but to leave the public record open for an additional 4 weeks.
Until, do we want to put a date on it?
4 weeks.
Oh.
from today, somebody wants to know.
Who's got a calendar? Hang on,
That'd be the 20th of September.
20th of September.
Okay, then to leave the public record open until the 20th of September.
I'll second that. I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich.
Yep.
Roy, the documents have been uploaded to the website for that application, just so you know.
Thank you. Rich, did you hear that those documents have already been uploaded to the public file, those public comment? Yes. Thanks. Thanks. All right, next we'll go to our post-hearing decisions. We have Michael and Leslie Recon at 22 Dune Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-176-4-7. The size and location is 13,796 square feet at 22 Dune Lane in Hampton Dunes, lot 53, map number 4694 in Amagansett. The description is to construct approximately 282 square feet of first and second story additions and 189 square feet of roof. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and two variances are required for this application. Variances of 40.8 feet and 37 feet are required from 255-430 of the Town Code in order to construct the additions 59.2 feet and decking 63 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B residence, Zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Who did this? Terry, it was you, right?
Tim was here, but
Yes.
so we'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The hearing date on this was May 3rd, 2022. And at the time of the hearing, the survey we were using was dated 6/4/21, which was received by this board at 6/17/21. Post-hearing, we did receive an updated survey along with a invasive plant removal and revegetation plan that were dated 7/22/22 and received by the board on August 9th of 2022. So that's the latest survey date. It's interesting. It needed an NRSP. At first glance, well, if you recall, on the first floor addition, which is closest to the wetlands, there was, it was being proposed that addition be done, it would be done over already improved property. There was a brick walkway, if you recall, that goes along there. And the second floor addition with the roof deck was on the eastern side of the property, and that was a second floor with some pool equipment underneath at the ground floor level of that side. The discussion around it revolved a lot around the lack of mitigation that was proposed by the client, pointed out by the planning board, as well as Member Brenneman, who was the board member who did the field report at the time. And there was a lot of busyness in the property. He pointed out much of some invasive plants mixed in with native vegetation and natural vegetation. There was a lot of concern discussed because of the contours of the property. A lot of the dune land was it was pretty steeply. The house was raised up, not raised up, but on a higher portion of the property, and that there was a lot of drop off on the property of the dune land and the elevations, the contours. There was a lot of discussion about that. Also, it was recommended that perhaps the client should consider a new IA or WTS low nitrogen sanitary system. And the property seems to have already has a lot of large house on it. It's a 5-bedroom house that exists today. They were not adding any bedrooms, but they wanted to add a bathroom to the first floor of that addition, as well as extending out the bedroom on the second floor and then a roof deck over that. It was mentioned by the planner at the hearing that there were better alternative locations on the property rather than that one for the first floor addition, which is closest to the close to the wetlands. Sorry. And they were suggested to move to the eastern portion of the property. And one recommendation was perhaps put it underneath the second floor addition that they were proposing for the house, and as well as some other locations. And with that, minimally, they could improve the variance, or reduce the variance required by 5 feet, and possibly up to 10 feet. And discussions of the dune land, they mostly revolved again around that there was no mitigation. There were concerns about the clearing on the property. It showed clearing on the survey around 3 portions of it, but that there was a concern for dune land clearing even on the portion on the eastern side heading toward the northeast where the second floor addition is, that there was a concern about disturbance that might occur in construction in that area. All in all, it seemed, well, all in all, I'm going to deny this application. I think it's not the minimum variances necessary for the additions. And I think there are alternative designs that could be done. And as far as the NRSP, I think this does not meet the NRSP standards as far as protection of the dune lands. We did get this revegetation plan and invasive plant removal plan, and that actually, while it sounds good, I didn't find it, I guess, detailed enough, and also that gave me additional concerns about the natural resources protection of the dune land on this property, as well as on the other portions of the property where the additions were proposed. So all in all, I think it does not meet the natural resources standard for protection of the dunes, as well as the wetlands that are on the property. So I am looking to deny this application.
Can I ask a point of clarification? On the denial for the addition not meeting alternative design or location, what are you basing that on? Are you basing that on the planners?
On the planner's
All
comments.
right, but we
that
have
they said they should-
we have a qualified architect saying that was improper planning. So I just want to make sure that that's a proper nexus for not approving that. I'm just want a clarification of that. I just,
Well, I understand what you're saying, but one of the variance standards is reasonable alternatives can be considered to achieve the same goals.
I'm not questioning your denial. I'm just
Right.
questioning the reasoning for that particular thing.
Because I kind of,
When I looked at the elevation diagrams too, it looked odd to me on the east side with just the 2 posts with the second floor addition. I don't know if that's apropos, but
Okay, next.
yeah, I know he said that, but I'm not sure I heard exactly why he thought that.
Well, I think he spent a bit of time on it, so that's why I think, and when you have an architect around as long as he has, I think, I from a qualification standpoint, I think we got to give that some credence.
Okay.
But that being said,
Well,
that's
when we
fine. It's
leave it
fine.
at that for now, I want to
that's
hear
fine.
what everyone else has to
No,
say.
I agree. That's
Okay.
thank you.
well, this is for a natural resource special permit and substantial variances are being requested. The parcel already has a 2,022 square foot, 2-story residence, swimming pool, shower, hot tub, and associated structures, 5-bedroom house, and the parcel is already non-conforming. The proposed additions are located in the most non-conforming areas available around this site. I think the project could have been designed in a way that would better meet the variance and NRSP standards. I too agree with Member Berger. The additions are located in some of the most non-conforming areas available around the residence, and one of the variance standards is reasonable alternatives could be considered in order to achieve those goals. These variances are substantial and more thought should be given to locating the additions to better meet the variance and NRSP standards. since this is a pristine dune land location where the integrity of the dunes and vegetation should be maintained. I feel that this application does not meet the standard for an NRSP or variances, and for these reasons, I am denying this application.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, also the planner had commented at the.
I'm not
meeting that
questioning
That
denial at
first
all.
floor
Yeah.
addition, the first story addition could actually, they could have basically alluded that they could put a bathroom in the existing
Yep.
room.
Yep.
With adequate
I think when we
space.
get through this,
Yeah,
we might
yeah,
have a
okay.
clarity on it,
Yeah,
so let's see what.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that my fellow board members have covered a lot of points that came up during the hearing. I think that on the surface, this is a not unreasonable request. It was thought out in a way that what made the most sense for the applicant to expand these 2 bedrooms and to add a bath, and that was made sense over what is a disturbed area already. I understand that it's increasing a nonconformity, and that is a factor and going to be in my decision. But it also, if we're asking ourselves, if somebody's looking to improve their property, how do they best do it with the least amount of let's say, distress to them? They chose an avenue that was going to allow them to build in what is the most practical way. I think sometimes when we say we can move something to make it more conforming, that's fine, but trying to expand a bedroom out of kitchen just because that side's more conforming can be difficult. So I think there was that. However, there was a good point made by member Brenneman at the time, is that although the survey appears to show us a lot that is of a certain size, because of the severe drop off, it's really at the point where we are getting close to maxing out what we would like to see on a parcel that's as sensitive as this, and protecting the dunescape here, protecting the environment, and looking to approve an NRSP always brings up to a higher level of what we should be considering. I thought it was important at the night of the hearing that the applicant was offered a couple of ideas by member Brenneman on how we might look at more favorably if remediation could be offered up. One of them was to possibly remove some non-natives and to offer us up a planting plan. That did happen. I think we got that on August 9th, 2022. And that plan, and I would agree with member Berger, is not a particularly robust or ambitious plan, but it does offer to take out some of the non-natives and to provide a planting list. But key for me is that this would have been a very much easier for me to look favorably on this if the IA system had been considered by the client. I think that if we get an opportunity to protect groundwater, and in this case, the surrounding area, with a new system, a better system, an improved system, it's a real plus for us. But I don't see that effort was made here. So I think this one for me becomes a very tough call, because I understand that for the client or the applicant here, they're looking to do what they think is the simplest way to add on to the house and to give them a little more room. But in the long term, I'm not sure that encouraging this kind of expansion just because it's possible is in the best interest of us and awarding an NRSP. So for that reason, in what I consider to be a close call, and I would say that in citing, I'm not going to read it in, I guess, but citing the code, and we talked about whether or not alternative reasonable uses of the property or alternative designs. Alternative designs certainly existed, and that's 255-5-51 existed, but in line with a comment that was made by the chair, they may not have been practical enough for the client to agree to. Nonetheless, I am looking to join my fellow board members and deny this application.
Thank you. Right off the bat, I'm also in agreement and a denial on this. So, I want to put that at rest. I just want to clarify the reason and why we did it. For me, this is a non-conforming lot. It's an undersized lot. This is an area that is in dune lands, wetlands are there, and it is the neighborhood was primarily beach cottages. And I think from an expansion's point of view, this house is already large for this property. And I think further expansion is offsetting that. I agree with member Johan that I don't think the re-veg rises to the level of offsetting that redevelopment. I would have also liked to have seen the septic system, but I think with when you have non-conforming lots like this, with that is intended originally for small little beach cottages, you have to start looking at where the limit of redevelopment is before it changes its character. So that's my reasoning for that. You
I didn't.
want to hold off? That's fine. Council, are we good on that?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. All right, next we have Dante British at 330 Gerard Drives in Springs, Suffolk tax map number 300-64-1-18. The size and location is 24,636 square feet at 330 Gerard Drive in Springs. The description is to renovate an existing one-story residence and construct 502 square foot of 1- and 2-story addition with 223.9 square feet of first and second floor decking, a pergola, an outdoor shower on a parcel of land containing tidal wetlands and beach vegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit and are pursuant to 255-420, variances from 255-440, minimum wetland setbacks of the town code, and any other relief necessary. The following wetland setback variances are required. 1 and 2 variances of 41 feet are required to construct the closest of the additions and the outdoor shower 59 feet from wetlands. 3, a 66-foot variance is required to construct the pergola 34 feet from wetlands. And 4, a 40-foot variance is required to construct the closest of the decking 60 feet from wetlands, all where 100-foot setbacks is required for structures. The zoning district is A2 residence, AE flood zone, elevation 8, X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. Terry, you did the report, I believe,
Yeah,
on
I
this.
can
You wanna-
start if you
and
want.
This is Denise too, so maybe
Terry's.
I can start.
you're going to start
Yeah,
and then,
start,
okay, then we'll go around. Okay.
Okay, so this hearing was, what's this hearing? May 17th? Do I have that right?
May 17th, yes.
17th, okay. And we had the survey we were using was June 3rd, 21 for Gary Ben's survey. The agent for this applicant was Richard Hammer and Joe Halsey. Mr. Hammer was the one that spoke at the hearing. So this was, well, it's adding a second story to a one-story, very nice looking, a house. It's okay, let me start over again. This is a non-conforming property, pre-existing non-conforming. It's down on the southern tip almost of the southern peninsula of Gerard Drive. And it's been there and in this ownership for decades of the British family. And the ownership changed, just as a note, that originally it was in Dante Brittis's name, and then it was changed to an LLC, but it's for the British Family Trust. It's for purposes of estate transfers in the future. So they were adding a master bedroom on a second floor that was being added, and this was it was 502, proposed 502 feet of interior space plus interior rearrangement. And as mitigation, they were offering an upgrade of the sanitary system, which was not required by it. This was an 1,800-foot house when it was built, and they were adding 502 feet, which I find to be pretty substantial. This was all at the hearing. I do find the variances for the pergola to be also very, very expansive. All of the variance is actually for the additions. And then there was an outdoor shower also with a variance that was discussed at the time. So their logic was that it was best to add a second floor rather than to expand out the current footprint. They did want to keep the current footprint. And then, so ultimately, after the discussion, we saw, with the planner was quite passionate about the beauty and the need to preserve this area, as you could see from the photos and the documentation that we reviewed that night. But at the end of the hearing, the property, let me get to the surroundings of the property. This is the last house that is developed on that southern peninsula, and it's adjacent to town-owned property preserve. And then immediately south, that is the beach, the public beach at the South Peninsula. During the hearing, the project itself did not seem like a huge amount for a property and a house of this size. And the owner do appear to be very much a good steward of the environment and the land. They have kept it the way it is, was for the last 30 years. And when I went out to the property, you could see that they were also leaving everything natural. And, so it was very nice. I think it was a relatively good application. However, when you take the whole picture as far as the environmental aspect of that entire area of Girard Point, as the planner very eloquently pointed out a number of aspects of the entire Girard Point Park area. It's part of the state area of Fisher, the New York State Fish and Coastal Habitat. It's a state area of statewide significance of Accabonac Harbor. The visibility of this property and this area in general from Accabonac Harbor, Last Point, Girard Point, and in the photos and the aerials that we saw that were presented by the planning department, it was pretty impressive. It was more than pretty impressive. It was very impressive. And my decision on this project, well, let me finish. At the hearing, we agreed to leave the record open for a portion of time for them to review and come up with additional changes, perhaps. And they did submit another plan where they took, on the second story addition, they changed the roof line and brought it down, and it effectively took off 5 feet from the second story addition. And so it reduced let me find the exact number, it reduced the project from a 502 foot down to 383 square feet total, which is in another area, perhaps would be doable and acceptable. However, back to the natural features of this area, there was discussion about the character of the neighborhood, and is going back to this property is part of the Peconic Estuary critical environmental area. It has its own critical environmental area aside from being part of the Accabonac Harbor, and all of this. And now those are New York State rules, and the requirements on that is about a benefit or threat on human health. It's exceptional or unique natural settings, which this clearly is, in inherent ecological, geologic, hydrological sensitivity to environmental change, which we know that entire area, particularly the Southern Peninsula, is. And those are New York State standards, actually are town standards, I feel, and are for natural resources, special permit and protection of the environment, or even just re-emphasize the state rules in this case. And It was immediately adjacent, it is immediately adjacent to a Cobra flooding zone. And so all in all, I think this project, while the applicant made a good case and for why, they love it and they love the area, and I believe they do. You can see that from the property itself. I think it was a relatively good application. However, on the face of the natural resources special permit standards, I cannot approve this project. I think it does not conform to 255-111. The purposes of zoning, orderly growth to guide and regulate it in development, the protection of neighborhoods to protect established character of neighborhoods, and also aesthetic attributes, which is one of the purposes of zoning, to perpetuate and enhance areas of natural beauty, to retain outstanding water views and other open vistas available to residents and visitors, and to perpetuate that generally those attributes and amenities which not only please the eye, but which together are the essence of the nationally recognized character of this town. And so for these reasons, and I think it doesn't meet the special permit standards, but for these reasons, I'm going to deny the application. I think the variances were substantial, but overall, it's the NRSP that I cannot approve on this one.
Thank you. All right, Denise?
Thank you. I agree with Member Berger. This Gerard Drive is a very unique and one of the most environmentally sensitive areas in the town of East Hampton. The property is located along the western shoreline of the peninsula along Accabonac Harbor. It is adjacent to the Coastal Barrier Resources Area. The property adjoins more than 9 acres of town-owned nature preserve. A statement from Cobra notes coastal barriers serve as natural storm protective buffers and are generally unsuitable for development because they are vulnerable to hurricanes and storm events. These are very substantial variances, and this is a very difficult property because of the sensitivity of the area, and the constraints of the property make it a poor candidate for approval. Further development on this pre-existing non-conforming lot is just not appropriate. This is a scenic easement. This is a scenic area of statewide significance. The very small separation between an inner harbor and an outer harbor make this peninsula very fragile. It has been designated its own critical environmental area, and it's in a significant fish and coastal wildlife area. The grant of these substantial variances on this non-conforming lot could also spark similar properties in this portion of the peninsula to do the same thing. I don't feel that this application is in keeping with 255-111 of the town code, which does address orderly growth of the community. It secures safety from flood, storm, and other dangers. It does not comply with the natural resource special permit standards in 255-420, and it does not comply with the minimum wetland setbacks, 255-540. I do feel that this project will have adverse impacts on the environment, and these are substantial variances, and for these reasons, I am denying this application.
Thank you. Ed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My fellow board members have covered an awful lot of what I would have agreement with. Certainly the coastal barrier resource area being either adjacent and actually incorporating part of this parcel factors into my thinking. Additionally, it's a point to mention is that the additions do compromise a 40% increase in the nonconformity, and that's something for us to consider on its own basis there. Under most circumstances, this might seem to some to be a modest proposal, but the sensitivity of this area has been pointed out again by my fellow board members is well known. The town has gone out of their way to emphasize the importance of this area, and they've shown that by purchasing with CPF funds a number of parcels there that were pointed out by at the time by the planners, that have more or less surrounded that area of the harbor as best they can. I think that when we look at something that's as sensitive as this, I think we have to be very careful about how we move forward. I think that this is an area that is quite a bit more sensitive than some of the places we look at. It's very low lying. We know that it is an important area in terms of both the fishery and in terms of other ecological factors. I think that looking for an NRSP and 4 variances to begin with was something that was a bit of an ask. I think the comments in the TAM showed that this is a particularly sensitive parcel, and it was suggested there that it was a poor candidate. I think that the letter of June 14th, 2022 showed an effort to accommodate the wishes of the board, but it's really not enough under the circumstances. As the last house on the east end of Girard Drive, and one that lies entirely within this coastal barrier resource area, it is unique in its setting. And the addition of a second story above the existing roof line does not only change the building's appearance, but the aesthetics of the neighborhood is also affected, and one of the area's most critical locations. When I viewed the elevations here, I understand that they brought that height down, but when we talked about the character of the neighborhood, and it was pointed out by Member Berger, that code does point out that maintaining vistas is important when we consider what we're doing. It's a significant change to the look of that neighborhood, and I do think it does have an influence on my decision. This is a different approach when we take a look at this house compared to a lot of others. And I don't know that if you have a parcel like this, that you can just assume that this addition can move forward. I think it's a very difficult parcel for you to do that. I think it was pointed out that the applicant has made a sincere effort to maintain the property's integrity, and I appreciate that. Alternative solutions may exist by some redesigned structure to limit its impact, and perhaps without the second floor addition, but that remains to be seen. Given the sensitive area here and many of the things that have already been mentioned, I certainly am in agreement with my fellow board members, and I am prepared to deny this application.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. For me, I'll start off by saying I think the planning department's assessment on this is right on. This piece of property fits into all the environmental protection boxes, and then more. So, when even we brought up the Cobras, but Brian spent some time talking about the critical environmental areas, this being part of 2 CEAs, one of the Peconic Estuary and then its own in the Acaponic Harbor area, which is pretty impactful to me. My assessment, and if you remember my questioning during the hearing, was about the character of the neighborhood. Again, I do believe this from the face of it, it's a modest design and improvement. But when you look at it from character of the neighborhood, and I define the character of the neighborhood, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to try to define the neighborhood. We did that during the hearing. I think it's the entire scope of the area relative to, we pointed out from Girard Drive, the point, from Louse Point, from anywhere in the harbor. This house is what you see, and it's critical to that character. But I think I'm going to spend a few moments in the code looking at, I know Denise already alluded to it, 25511, which deals with the purposes of the town code and why the town laid out. And there's some critical ones here, and I'll take a brief moment just to read the ones that I think apply. It's 255-111A, the orderly growth to guide and regulate the orderly growth, development, and redevelopment of the town in accordance with a comprehensive plan and long-range objectives, principles, and goals set forth therein as beneficial to the interests of the people. And B, it's the protection of neighborhoods to protect the established character of the neighborhoods, especially residential neighborhoods, the social and economic well-being of residents, and the value of private and public property. And C, the proper use of land to promote in the public interest the utilization of land for the purposes of which it is the most appropriate, and to protect the responsibility, promote public access and to the usage of public-owned lands and waters. In E, the preservation to promote in public interest, the preservation of prime agricultural land, productive wetlands, protective barrier dunes and beaches, unique vegetation, important animal habitats, and other natural resources, and man-made features of historical, environmental, and cultural significance to the community. And I think G applies clean water to protect and promote the fisheries and resort industries of the town by perpetuating and where necessary, restoring a healthful biological and chemical balance throughout the town's waters, including its bays, harbors, wetlands, estuaries, ponds, streams, kettle holes, and other bogs, natural drainage channels, and water courses, as well as the adjacent sounds and ocean, which is basically describes this area, right? This is, I believe Accabonac Harbor was one of the impetuses for the town developing this code. And then finally in L, and I think this is important as well, the aesthetic attributes to perpetuate and enhance areas of natural beauty, to retain outstanding water views and other open vistas available to residents and visitors, and to perpetuate generally those aesthetic attributes and amenities which not only please the eye, but which together are the essence of the nationally recognized character of the town. And I think this is paramount to this piece of property. I think just adding a second floor on this will completely change the character of the neighborhood from everywhere you look.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm also denying the application.
We also
Thank you.
did have 3 public callers, so I
Yes.
read a
Yeah.
letter that,
Yeah.
all were in opposition, not that.
And
that
one
was-
email from
Yeah.
Arnold Leo.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Council, we good?
Yeah.
Let's move on.
So what do we got?
We have other decisions. And I'm going to read this in, and maybe Brian, you can go through it with us. 316 OMH LLC is 316 Old Montauk Highway in Montauk, Suffolk tax map number 300-88-1-26.2. The description is to modify a February 4th, 2021 determination which allowed 473 square foot of deck to remain and construct 742 square feet of first floor addition, 559 square feet basement addition with window wells and egress sanitary system, and a 53 square foot outdoor shower on a parcel of land containing bluffs and beaches. Brian, maybe you can just kind of run through it with us.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. This is a modification request that was reviewed by my colleague Tyler Borsak. This is a property that was approved for a one-story addition in 2021. The modification there was an administrative approval. It was issued by the planning department. It didn't require any variances. And the reason this is being brought to the board's attention is the scale of the modification. The modification will increase it will change the number of stories from 1 to 2. It will increase gross floor area from 3,412 feet to 4,625 feet. It increases coverage. It increases total coverage. It increases clearing. And I think the bottom line here is that it's long been the planning department's position that modifications are for minor changes to things that are already approved. Part of the reason that there is a 20-day public comment period on administrative permits as opposed to the 10-day comment period for things that are going to a hearing is to allow that additional review time to the public for something that's not going to have a public hearing. So to have a published notice indicate a scale and size of any application, and then to change that scale and size of something approved without a new notice to the public is pretty inconsistent with the parameters. That doesn't, that's not a judgment on the merits of this application. It's simply a comment on, or the planning department's position that this would be an inappropriate candidate for the department to modify administratively, and maybe an inappropriate candidate to modify without notice to the adjoining neighbors and public in general.
Right. Board members, any comment?
Well, I'll speak up. I think that there's, in Montauk, where I'm from, there's very little area that's more critical to us than Old Montauk Highway. We certainly have had long discussions and I won't say contentious, but certainly very seriously considered decisions that we've looked at. So anytime we're on Old Montauk Highway, for several reasons. One is to protect the interest of the neighbors and the public. I think the public does chime in on these. We do get regular feedback. I think that they should be respected in that point of view. And I think this is a significant change. I know we received a letter August 19th from Rick Whalen's office saying that it's not a significant change. I would disagree with that. And I think that anytime we're dealing with something like this on the Old Montauk Highway, which is not absolutely just a minimum change, we have to consider going to a hearing. So my look on this would be that this is something that has to come back for a hearing, and primarily, or at least equally, so that the public can weigh in. The public is important on all decisions, and the highway certainly draws a lot of attention. So that would be my take.
Denise, go ahead.
I agree with Vice Chairman Johan. This is a substantial change. And the neighbors who were affected by the earlier proposal didn't object to the administrative NRSP. And now, of course, there's a brand new application that they have not been made aware of. So I do agree there is a process that we have to respect. And I do agree that this should be scheduled for a public hearing because they are really very substantial changes. They're significant. And the public really should be a part of the process.
I agree. Terry?
Okay, I agree. I think the changes that they're proposing are substantial. And regardless that it was an administrative application previously, I disagree with the points pointed out in Rick Whalen's memo. So I too think it needs to go to a hearing.
Yeah.
Application.
I agree. I think there are modifications and then there are brand new applications. And while sometimes there's room for discretion, this one clearly seems to be on the side of it. They should have applied fresh. I think if I was a neighbor, I would be taken aback by seeing a one-story house suddenly go to 2 stories without my being noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I'll also throw in there, because applications go through a scrutiny, even with the zoning board, I think it's important for us as a board to take a look at the application, not only just the public. So,
Well, that was Ed's point about really looking at Old Montauk Highway
exactly.
applications.
Okay. Thank you. Council, you good on that?
Yes.
Thank you. Just testing if you're still there.
Well, procedurally, this was an administrative permit, so I don't know if it's appropriate to have a hearing for the board to modify an administrative permit, or if procedurally it's more correct to direct the applicant to make a new application.
Well, that's a call. Typically the planning board decides whether something's administrative or not.
When the new application comes in, if it came in as a new application, we could see, we could maybe this is reasonable to do as a new administrative application. The neighbors get their notice. It doesn't need variances. I don't think Tyler looked at it at that level of detail to make that assessment yet. But there was discussion about whether it needed a hearing or not. And since the original permit was a modification, I'm just looking for a little bit.
But
The original permit was
again, if it's
administrative.
a modification and we're denying it as a modification or saying there's a
Right.
hearing, then either it comes to us as a modification or goes back to you as a new application. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Mhm.
I think coming back as a modification is fine. Do you have a problem with that? Or would you rather see this is
But wait a minute, didn't we just determine?
a
we thought it
modification. They
wasn't-
requested a modification.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I,
And
So
I
we're
suppose the planning
denying the
department could have just
modification.
declined it, but rather than decline it, we wanted to, vet it through the board.
correct.
But again, I mean, procedurally, this is something that if it's, rather than iron it down now, it's something that I can, that we can discuss with council and direct the applicant accordingly,
I'd be
if
fine with
that's
that.
acceptable.
Yes.
We'd be fine
Counsel?
with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think Brian's right on about that. See what comes in. If that's something that could be granted administratively, take it at that level. If it's something you wouldn't grant administratively, then you kick it up to the full public hearing. But I would start with step one.
Well, step one is denying this modification, right?
Great.
What We just said we were
Agree.
doing.
Step one after you've denied it as, a minor modification. The board's, from what I'm hearing from the board and from the planning department is the concern about the notice to the neighbors. So whether it goes administratively or public hearing, that notice will at least be satisfied and those neighbors will have their chance to weigh in on whether they think this is, too much.
Right.
That's what you're mostly, focused on from what I've heard all 5 board members talk about.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have minutes approval,
minutes,
draft
okay.
minutes of August 16th.
Sure, they look good to me. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals minutes for August 16th, 2022.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. We now have resolutions. We have Lawrence Chaffetz at 56 Osprey Road, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-131-7-2. Council, you want to give us a brief?
Sure. So this is a determination that was circulated to the board. This was an application that was actually redesigned. And aside from member Savarese, the board was unanimously in favor of it as redesigned. This was for an NRSP and 5 variances on this application. And I asked that this determination be adopted as drafted.
I don't believe this was unanimous. Did
No.
you say? it was
No,
unanimous?
said it-
Except for.
Oh,
whatever
except for-
I said except for,
I'm sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
It's a 3-1.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. I'm not sure what, whether I said it or not, or just thought it.
Thank you.
That mild fever.
Then in the case of Lawrence Chaffetz, 56 Osprey Road, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-131-07-02, I would like to make a motion to accept this determination as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur as well.
Is it really Montauk though? It says Montauk.
No,
Isn't it?
Is it Amagansett?
It was,
Amagansett?
yeah, it was really Amagansett. Next, we have Julian Mizierski at the 3rd at 44 Beach Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-175-3-10. Council?
Before we get to that, I don't think it's more than a scrivener's error. If the board would like me to correct that before on the final that gets adopted from Montauk to Amagansett, I can certainly do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a minor. Okay.
Yes.
I don't think we'll get any pushback.
No.
Okay, so it's changed from Montauk to Amagansett? No, Mizierski. This was a unanimous denial of a application for an NRSP, and 8 variances. This was that property that is extremely constrained, and the way it was proposed to be built out basically had structures in the wetlands. This was vehemently opposed by neighbors, which the board took into consideration in addition to the advice and detailed memorandum of the planning department. And this was distributed last week for the board's review, and I ask that the board adopt the determination as written.
Then in the case of Julian J. Mazursky III of 44 Beach Avenue, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-175-03-10, I'd like to make a motion to accept the determination as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur as well. Next, we have People's United Bank at 351 Montauk Highway, East Hampton. Suffolk Tax Map number 300-189-1-2.
So this was the property where it had the limited business overlay. You had part residence, part commercial, and the application was to sever those two so that now you have a residential lot behind the commercial lot that fronts Montauk Highway. Some of the conditions discussed and agreed to and are in the determination are that the portion of the residential lot that still has the LBO on it, that will be abandoned, and that there will be some additional screening to assuage the concerns of the neighbors in terms of view of parking lot. And this determination was circulated as well last week, and I ask that the board adopt this determination as written.
Therefore, I make a motion for People's United Bank at 351 Montauk Highway, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-189-1-2 to adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur.
Thank you. Next, we have Tricia and Daniel Shea at 137 Westlake Drive in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-19-10-6.
So this was a determination drafted and circulated to the board. The purpose of this application was also an NRSP and 3 variances. This was the property that included a lot of mitigation, which the board applauded the applicant on, including new IA system and scenic easements and some covenants and restrictions, all of which are set forth in the conditions to this approval, which was unanimously approved by the board as it sat on that day. And I ask that this determination be adopted as written.
Matter of Tricia and Daniel Shea at 137 Westlake Drive, Montauk, tax map 300-019-10-6. I make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
A second.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Finally, we have Christine Murphy at 257 East Lake Drive in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-13-1-13 and 19.
So this is actually a resolution that amends a determination. This was the property that had the extensive build out and stop work order that initially had a 2019 approval, but due to the changes that were made by the applicant's builder and the subsequent stop work order that addressed those changes, the applicant came back with a new application in 2021, which was denied, and the 2019 determination was revoked. As a result, the applicant commenced in Article 78, and through the efforts of council and the board and the applicants, we were able to resolve it, and with the assistance of the judge assigned to the case, so that the mitigation efforts and certain conditions were met by the applicant. So this resolution actually amends the determination that previously revoked the 2019 and reinstates it subject to certain conditions, including new building plans that omit any need for pyramid, a revegetation plan, a new IA system, which was not part of either of the original applications, and other mitigation efforts. And this was circulated to the board and revised and recirculated, and I ask that this resolution amending determination be adopted.
Okay, therefore, in the matter of Christine Murphy, 257 East Lake Drive, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-13-1-13 and 19, I make a motion to accept the determination as written.
Second.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you, everybody. I think we'll go to the vice chair to close the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to close the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing and work session for tonight, August 23rd, 2022 at 8:25 PM.
Second. I concur.
I concur. Thank you.